Michael, I heard your name mentioned, so maybe I'll let you go first.
Anyway, I think it's a good point. Governor Torello, others have talked about this point. One would have thought that pension funds and other institutional investors have their own insurance companies who would otherwise only would be buyers of this debt, would have their own rules, subject to their own regulations, about diversification requirements for both with respect to any individual institution and a whole sector. You know, as Anna's pointed out, sometimes things that one would have thought don't turn out to be true, and consequently, I think it is an issue that the regulators of those institutions that are institutional buyers, particularly the ones which are kind of tinged with the public interest, like pension funds, for example, particularly municipal pension funds and regulated insurance companies, I think their regulators are going to have to go in and check and make sure that there are adequate limitations. I think that's their responsibility, as well as the responsibilities of the boards of directors and managements of those institutions. But the issue you identify is an issue which has been identified for some time in connection with this, and you know, there's certain steps that have to be taken in terms of how much we have to hold, the nature of those instruments and the like. And I think the next step will be additional legal work for Paul in advising pension funds and insurance companies about how much they can hold, both on an individual institution basis and on a sector basis. I'll start on the second question, which is there was a lot of liquidity in 2008. It just wasn't flowing. So the fact that there are a lot of people out there with liquidity doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to put it into an institution under single point of entry. I think that because the operating entities don't fail, and because they are recapitalized with holding company resources, as the market begins to understand that better, capital is what will provide the basis for liquidity flowing into those institutions.
Let me add 2 points. For the first point, the FSB, among others, has identified this issue on the long-term debt. And besides saying there has to be minimum amounts, minimum maturities, they've said, quote, it has to be held, quote, in the right hands. So they are signaling precisely the sort of exercise that Michael indicates, that both from a systemic perspective, the FSB, have to worry about too much of this debt going into the hands of other systemically important sectors, and they have to rely to some extent on the regulators of those sectors to do it. Let me be very clear. I'm hoping my IRA doesn't get bailed in, okay? But who knows, right? On the liquidity point, that is a significant issue. And the single point of entry does recapitalize. If it's made operational, will recapitalize. Recapitalization doesn't directly contribute to liquidity, but it indirectly potentially contributes to liquidity, because it reassures that the operating subsidiaries, all the operating subsidiaries, are well capitalized, presumably meet all the existing regulatory and market requirements in terms of capitalization. And there is some expectation that that facilitates the continuation of liquidity down at those operations. After all, the whole point of single point of entry